السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ask Allah to make this another beneficial sitting where we can study the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, and that he gives us the tawfiq to act upon them and make it as a proof for us on Yawm al-Qiyamah. We have reached now hadith number 5, and we have done 4 hadith before this. First hadith, if you can remind me of the first hadith. Okay, so the first hadith is the hadith of Niyyah. Second hadith of that's the hadith of Jibreel. Third hadith, Buny al-Islam al-Khams. Last week we finished the 4th hadith, which was the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, where he was talking about the creation and the belief in the qadar, and that the angel comes down and writes 4 things. What are those 4 things? His life, his wealth, provision, actions, wa shaqi'un and sa'id. Okay. All of these 4 hadith are connected to usul ad-din. All of these hadith are connected to the aqeedah of the Muslim. Hadith 1, 2, 3 and 4. From hadith 5 onwards now, we have more practical aspects of the religion. And if you cast your minds back to the first lesson, we said that the hadith of Niyyah of Umar radiallahu anh, some of the ulama have categorized that as being a third of the religion. Some of the ulama have said that the whole religion revolves around 4 hadith, as we will see today. Some of them have said no, it's 3 hadith. Some of them have said no, it's 2 hadith. And from those 3 or 4 or 5, depending on what the view of the shaykh or the imam is, they have included hadith number 5 within that. Hadith number 5 is the hadith of al-Mu'mineen, Abdullah, Aisha radiyallahu anha, who said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa min fahuwa radd." Whoever introduces something into the religion of Islam which was not part of it at that time, then it will be rejected. And another narration which is reported by Muslim, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa radd." And this hadith, like we said, is one of the tenets of the hadith which the ulama have said is extremely important for the Muslim to understand, because the whole religion revolves around it. But the reason why is that because standardization, following the Quran and the Sunnah with understanding Fahm Salaf as-Salih, protects the religion. It protects the religion. If we allow innovations to enter into the religion, if we allow different views and different aqeedah and different approaches to enter into the religion, then we will lose any kind of boundaries or benchmarks to understand the religion. So one innovation will lead to another innovation, and then it will lead to another innovation until the whole religion becomes clouded. And there are many examples of this. One of them, as we all know, after hundreds of years of the Prophet ﷺ's hijrah, they decided to celebrate the Prophet ﷺ's birthday. At that time, it wasn't innocent at all, but there was no shirk involved. Then that innovation evolved itself, and then it started involving shirk. Then it started involving free mixing. Then it started involving music. And then what they've done is, because from the very beginning they've legislated something new, trying to say that this is something new into the religion, but it's good, then everything becomes new and good. And then we lose any kind of attachment to the religion, any kind of description to the religion, all of it will go. And the Prophet ﷺ warned us against this, and he said, "Man ya'ish minkum fasayara ikhtilafan kathira." Whoever lives for a long period of time, then they will see a lot of differing. Alaykum bi sunnati, stick to my sunnah, wa sunnat al-khulafa ar-rashidin. Stick to my sunnah and the sunnah of the khulafa ar-rashidin. And the reason why that has been there is because that standardization will then remain. Here we have two different versions that Aisha radiallahu anha narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first one says, Man ahdath, whoever innovates. Whereas the second narration says, Man amil, whoever does an action. Does anybody know the difference between these two narrations and the understanding given by the ulama?
Whoever initiates, one meaning is whoever initiates the action is rejected, and whoever does, in the other narration, whoever does the action is also rejected.
Barakallah fiqh. Excellent answer. He said, Man ahdath refers to the person who initiates the action. The Shaykh, the Maulana, the Peer, whoever he is the one who innovates. He is the one who is telling his people, do this thing, is good for you. That will be rejected from him. But those people who then will follow that innovation that he has introduced, also they will have their action rejected from them. So that's why we have two different narrations, both talking about the rejection of innovation, but from different viewpoints. Different people are being referred to here. What are some of the lessons that we can learn from this hadith? Any action which has no dalil will be rejected. Any action which has no dalil will be rejected. Okay, if I drink 7-Up, or if I drink a fizzy drink, is that allowed or is that an innovation and I'll be sinful? Why? Because it's from the worldly matters. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, Fi amrina, in our affair. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, Laysa min. Ma laysa min, this is in this narration. Ma laysa min, or ma laysa fihi. Ma laysa fihi. So it's not part of the religion, it's not intrinsic inside of the religion, then it will be rejected from him. So this clearly shows that here we're talking about actions that we are attributing to the religion, then it will be rejected. What's the ruling on innovations? Is it haram? What's the category of haram that it falls into? Is it major haram or minor haram? Is it kufr? Is it shirk? Innovations are of different types. Innovation could be kufri, and it could be that is not involving any kufr or shirk. So if a person goes to a grave and decides to make hajj to that grave, that's a new innovation that nobody has done before. It's a new practice, but this innovation is much more severe than any other kind of innovation because it involves shirk. But if the action doesn't involve shirk, then the ulama have said that it is classed as a major sin. Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every kind of innovation is a misguidance. And another narration, which has been narrated by Nasa'i and others, he said, كُلُّ دَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. All kind of misguidance is in the hellfire. So if it's in the hellfire, then the ulama have classed this and understood this as being a major sin.
So it can never be a minor sin.
We can get into that. The ulama have also seen throughout the stages that bid'ah is of different levels. And this is exactly what the brother is asking here. Can bid'ah be something which is not a major sin? Initially, when innovation was introduced into the religion, they were referred to as Ahl al-Ahwa and Ahl al-Bid'ah and Zindiq and Zanadiq. And there was all these different phrases that you probably heard before and is well known from the books of the Salaf. And the reason why they referred to them as being such is because they were the ones who introduced the innovation from its outset. As in, they were the leaders and they were the pioneers of this innovation. So such harsh terminology and harsh stance was given towards them because of the severity of the sin that they are creating. However, the ulama have also classed that innovation in its general sense is a major sin. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every innovation is worse than major sins. I think I've discussed this with one of the brothers before. Sheikh Saleh al-Sheikh gives an example. If a person was to innovate an innovation, let's say for example he starts using the prayer beads. If you deem that as being an innovation, he starts using prayer beads. Are we going to say, so that's an innovation now, according to some ulama? Are we going to say that that is worse than killing someone? Are we going to say that's worse than zina? Are we going to say that's worse than riba? Of course it's not. So the point here is that in its general sense, innovating into the religion is a major sin. And that major sin can elevate itself to being kufr and shirk depending. But in its different details, it might not be a major sin or as equivalent or worse than being a major sin. Does that make sense? So we have to look at every single innovation for what it is. What is an innovation? Anybody know? What's a bid'ah?
Something that is speech, action, or belief that is against the way of the companions of the Prophet.
Speech or action or belief which is against the way of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Shatibi said that anything which is introduced or attributed into the Sharia without dalil, anything which is attributed or introduced into the Sharia without dalil. When does a person become a mubtadi'? So now we understand what bid'ah is. We now know the hukam. We now know that not all innovation is of the same, even though it's introduced into the religion. But when does a person become a mubtadi'? So now if a person is using prayer beads and he has a fatwa from Shaykh al-Albani and he comes to him and says, this is a bid'ah. Ibn Umar and other companions, they saw people using prayer beads, they came and they destroyed it. This is my dalil to you that you cannot do this, and if you continue to do this, I will deem you as being a mubtadi'. But the other person will say, no, I've got a fatwa from Shaykh ibn Baz and Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen and many other ulama, and they've said you can use prayer beads. This is obviously a very contentious issue because people have taken this lightly, and we've seen a level of strictness and harshness which really doesn't deserve itself as being introduced in this manner or applied in this manner. But the ulama like Imam al-Shatibi and others from the ulama also, and I believe many of the ulama who have explained the Sharh al-Sunnah of Barbahari have said that a person leaves Ahl-Sunnah and becomes a mubtadi', and becomes from Ahl-Ahwa, becomes from all of these different categories that we have seen, is when they leave the usul of the Sunnah. So like Abu Maryam was just saying, that you have to have the understanding, you have to have the belief, you have to have the actions of the Salaf as-Salih and how they understood the Quran and the Sunnah. If you leave that as your methodology, then you are leaving the way of Ahlul Sunnah. So if you say now, for example, I don't need the kitab, or I need the kitab, yes, of course, that's fundamental, but I'll understand it according to my aql. Or I'll have the kitab, but I don't need the Sunnah. I'll just take the Quran as it is, Lugha Arabiya. All of this is innovation. Why? Because it's not found from the way of the Salaf. So if a person leaves the usul of the Salaf, of Ahl Hadith, of the people who are upon the standardization that we were talking about before, that's when they are deemed as leaving Ahl Sunnah. So now, for example, going back to the prayer beads issue, if a person says, I've got a fatwa from a respectable sheikh who follows the Quran and the Sunnah, who's a Salafi, who's from Ahl Hadith, and this is my opinion, and another person has an opposing opinion, and he's got legitimate ijtihad also, can he now enforce his ijtihad on this person? No, he can't. He has to respect it because it's valid and it's legitimate and it has to be respected. Therefore, now we see people are saying that if you don't accept my ijtihad or the ijtihad of my shaykh, then you become a mubtadi'. Even in trivial issues sometimes. All of this is not from the understanding of what bid'ah is and how it should be applied. What if a person genuinely makes a mistake? So for example, he does prayer beads. Later on he changes his opinion and thinks, okay, this is bid'ah, I agree with Shaykh Albani now. Is he rewarded previously for what he did, or is he not? If he followed the ijtihad which was correct, then he will be rewarded for his intentions and for the action. he will be rewarded for the intentions and for the action. طيب. If a person does an action, for example, he goes and celebrates the Milad al-Nabi, he never knew anything about it, he's gone and he's joined them. Then afterwards he thinks, Akhi, I don't think this is right. And then he goes and rings the Shaykh, and the Shaykh goes, no, this is bid'ah. Will he be rewarded for showing that love for the Prophet ﷺ at that instant? Yeah? Shaykh al-Islam and Iqtida Sirat al-Mustaqeen said that the person will be rewarded for his intention, but not for the action. This will be the rad. But the intention is according to Quran and Sunnah. He's trying to do something which is expressing his iman in the Prophet ﷺ, but the way he's doing it is wrong. So the way is the innovation, but the intention he will be rewarded for. Right? So now we've had a few principles now. Another principle, this is very important. Another principle, if a person does something which is not sunnah, can you automatically class him as being an innovator? Let me give you an example. A person has dalil to put his hands below his navel, for example. He prays very low. And he thinks that this is the sunnah. And he's following it, and he's following it, and he's following it. But then somebody else comes to him and says, no, actually this hadith is da'if, and this is not, the correct way, etc. What would you say to that person? Would you say now, for example, you've become a mubtadi'? Why not? He's following some sort of ijtihad, he's following some sort of dalil. From this we understand that there is something which is known as sunnah, and that's when you are following the dalil with the correct ijtihad. But we also understand that sometimes someone might have an opposing view, but that could also be deemed within the realm of being sunnah. So now we find, unfortunately, a lot of people, they will say, for example, look at him, does he pray? Is it according to the sunnah? It's completely relative. It's completely subjective to the ijtihad that you wish to follow. Shaykh al-Albani has his sifr salah. Shaykh Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he has his own sifr salah. Ibn Uthaymeen has his own sifr salah. And many from the ulama have sifr salah. In the sunan of the Kutub al-Sittah, sifr salah is also there. Shaykh Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab that we studied last year has his own sifr salah. All of these are different with one another, sometimes very different. So the point here is it becomes very relative to say that this person is following the sunnah or is upon the sunnah. But the ulama agree that is when there is ittifaq or there is ijma' that this certain thing is sunnah, then it becomes an easy matter where you can say this is the sunnah. So now we have sunnah and then we have bid'ah. What if somebody does something, he has dalil for it, but he's misapplied it? He's misapplied it. For example, the Prophet ﷺ told told Ibn Mas'ud that at the end of every salat, kulli dubur salat, make dua for Allah for whatever you want. Make dua with Allah for whatever you want, because it will be accepted. A person comes now, the Prophet ﷺ said dubur, and dubur can be understood after, and it could be understood as in after taslim and before taslim. So a person understands it, he reads it, maybe he's read a translation, and he reads it and he thinks, okay, after every salah now I'm going to make dua because I know Allah's going to accept it. So after every salah, not congregation, he starts making dua, he raises his hands. What do you call this? Would you call this an innovation? What we will say now is that if a person has misunderstood something or misapplied something, this is known with the ulama as being Khilaf as-Sunnah. Khilaf as-Sunnah. That he is doing something that he thinks is right, but he's misunderstood it or he's misapplied it. He has misunderstood it or he has misapplied it. This is one example of Khilaf as-Sunnah. Another example of Khilaf as-Sunnah given by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah is that if somebody does something which is not from the Sunnah in its time or in its place or something like that, but it's not habitual. It's not habitual. Then we will say to that person, Akhi, you should stop doing it. It's against the Sunnah for you to do it in this manner. Same example you can use, making dua. What you would say, if you've seen him do it once, you could approach him and say, Akhi, Allah says in the Quran, فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمُ الصَّلَاةِ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهِ. When you have finished your salah, then remember Allah. I didn't say فَادْعُوا اللَّهِ. And the Prophet ﷺ's actions are quite clear. We used to know that he's finished his salah with the takbir and tahleel, and he commanded us or suggested that we recite Ayatul Kursi, and there's many different adhkar that you can do. So it's probably best if you don't do the dua right now. That is known as Khilaf as-Sunnah. He will not become a mubtadi' based on that. And unfortunately, again, as you can see, a person, he's done something wrong, khalas, big red X. So now we have seen different principles, and I'm trying to go through this as quick as we can, and I know I'm going through it pretty quickly, but we're still only on the 5th hadith. Shaykh Hafiz ibn Rajab rahimahullah has said that this hadith of actions being rejected don't only apply to acts of worship, they also apply to mu'amalat, to contracts and to dealings. So for example, if a person gets himself involved in an Islamic finance deal and it has, for example, a late penalty fee, that would be classed as an action which will be rejected. And the ulama have often used this hadith to say that that contract is incorrect and the action will be rejected. And there are other examples as well. For example, if riba is there, that's one example of this. Or if the nikah has not been done properly, or any other kind of mu'amalat that are not done properly, and it needs to be done properly because there are shurut, there are conditions, and there are different prerequisites that need to be met, then the ulama have applied the hadith, man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Now the ulama have said, what kind of innovations are there? Yani, how does it apply, and how can we apply innovations? The ulama, like Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, has said that this hadith is dictated by 6 things, or there are 6 different types of innovation. 6 different types of innovation. For example, number 1, the reason why you do an action. The reason why you do an action. So if the action has been legislated, but the reason why you're doing it is incorrect, then this will become an innovation. Another example, or another kind of innovation, is the type of action itself. The type of action itself, if it's not legislated, then it will be deemed as being an innovation. This is the most common ones. For example, Milad al-Nabi and all these things. The type of the action, the gathering in the masjid and the singing songs and all these things, then this has no precedence at all. Another kind is the amount of times that you do something. If a person prays Salat al-Asr 5 raka'at for the fard every single day, then we will say that this is an innovation. Why? Because he exceeded the amount. The manner the action is performed. So if a person, this is a matter that's been mentioned in the books of old. Is it permissible for you to pray on a ship? Is it permissible for you to pray on a ship? Now this is, you might think that it's not relevant. I've never been on a ship before, let alone thinking of praying on one. But then now the ulama have talked about, can you pray on a plane? It's the same thing. If you're able to stand, can you pray on a plane? The khilaf comes where some of the ulama, believes in the Maliki, etc., they said because you are moving, you are not on the ard, you are not on land, therefore you cannot pray on a boat. And then they've applied man amila amalan laysa alayhi amrun fahuwa rad. Whoever does an action in a manner of the way that is done, then it shall be rejected. And different times and different places. So now we have 6. So number 1, the reason why you do an action. If it is not legislated, then it will be rejected. Number 2 is the type. Number 3 is the amount of units, or the amount of times that you actually do the thing. Number 4 is the manner that you do the thing. Number 5 is the time that you do it in. So if you pray believing that the salat has begun for Salat al-Fajr at 1:30, and you are incorrect, and you are able to find out, but you are incorrect, then this is a form of innovation, because you are doing an action which has not been legislated. And also in a place, the example that we gave earlier, for example, a person making hajj towards a grave of a pious saint, etc., the hajj doesn't belong there. Obviously there are more severe issues than that, but this is an example of a person doing an act of worship in a place where it's not legislated. So,
could you give an example of how a reason of doing an action?
the reason for an action. So for example, if a person wants to, for example, can't think of an example. Anyone got an example as to a reason why you would do an action?
Gaining extra reward.
Gaining extra reward. But that would probably fall under manner. For example, if a person goes to Mecca now and he wants to do Umrah, he does his Umrah, can he go back to Tan'im to get extra reward again and again? Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said no, this is an innovation. Because Umrah linguistically comes from the word az-ziyara. Ziyara means safar. So every single Umrah means that you're traveling from your house to the Haram, you perform it, and that's ikhlas. If you want to do Umrah again, go back home and then come back. That's his opinion. So that's manna. And usually if you're seeking more reward, it's usually the manna or the amount. But reason, I mean, for example, a person, again, he prays Salatul Fajr at 1:30. Why is he praying at that time? Because he wants to pray Salatul Fajr. What's the reason why he is praying? He's praying for invalid reason, because the time has not begun yet. For example, maybe there is a better example than that. But 1:30 for Fajr.
I know, but this is not the reason, it's the time.
This is the time, I know, but I mean also the reason, because we're here at the Shurut al-Salah, you have niyyah. Maybe there is a better example anyway. What are some of the consequences of innovation? What are some of the consequences of innovation? If a person allows innovation to enter into religion, they start following innovation and start following innovators, what will happen is that they will remove what is better for them and exchange it for something which is not better. Prophet ﷺ came with the wahi, and his wahi is complete and his wahi is perfect, and the more person leaves that and they replace it with something else, as many of the Salaf said, then every innovation kills an aspect of the Sunnah. Every innovation kills an aspect of the Sunnah. So for example, they're making dua in congregation after Salah. How many people know the actual Sunnah that has been prescribed after the Salat? How many people from that kind of community actually pray Ayatul Kursi after the Salah is finished? And the Prophet ﷺ clearly told us that there's nothing that prevents a person from reciting Ayatul Kursi after every maktubah, and except that he will dakhal al-Jannah, that he will go to Jannah, and nothing will prevent him from entering Jannah illa sam. Nothing will prevent him from entering into Jannah except death. So what happens now is they substitute this virtuous hadith for making dua in congregation. Another negative consequence of innovation is that a person becomes more negligent on what actually is legislated, and then becomes more devout on things that are not legislated. You will find people of bid'ah championing their bid'ah and supporting their bid'ah, and not really worried about the things that they know are legislated. So they will have a shoe print in front of their house, they will have a sandal, they will have flags and all of these things. But when you ask them about the reminder of reciting the Quran, going to the masjid and being a good neighbor and all these kind of things, completely negligent. When these are the things that they should, I'm sure they already know of, the religion, as being already legislated. Some of the ulama have said innovations that enter into the religion always, by default, always include something which is either haram or makruh. either haram or makruh. So for example, people want to celebrate the Prophet's birthday. There are so many different, just even if they weren't going to do anything wrong. Say they came to the masjid, and the reason why they came to the masjid was to gather to remember the Prophet ﷺ. Why are you gathered here? Our reason, example, is so that we can remember the Prophet ﷺ on 12th Rabi'ul Awwal. That's the only reason why we are here. What that does is that it will indefinitely include something which is prohibited in the Sharia. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said that this differs, some of these things that the innovation will have which is prohibited can be either something which is haram or it can be something which is makruh. But what is quite obvious now, for example, these people, they're saying, okay, we're going to come and we're going to remember the Prophet ﷺ on this day. Well, who are they imitating? Clearly they're imitating the Christians and different religions that take certain days which are not legislated. So that in itself would involve something haram, let alone anything else that comes after that. Some of the ulama have added, Ibn Rajab goes on to talk about different characteristics and different negative consequences that come about after innovation. For example, it opens the door and it makes it easy for people to follow their desires. But one of the biggest ones is that the Prophet ﷺ will see his ummah Yawm al-Qiyamah, and he will invite them to drink from his hold, but they will be prevented. And the Prophet ﷺ will try and intercede for them and say, no, they are from my companions, they are from my ummah. And it will be said to him from the malaika, إِنَّهُمْ قَدْ بَدَّلُوا بَعْدَكَ, they have changed the religion after you, they have innovated. So then you will lose the companionship with the Prophet ﷺ in the dunya and in the akhirah. May Allah protect us and our families. Hadith number 6 is the hadith of Abu Abdullah Nu'man ibn Bashir, and this is also one of those ahadith which has been categorized as being the most important ahadith that the ulama have talked about. A third of the religion, some of them have said. But the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna al-halal bayyin." The halal is clear. What's the ruling on eating chicken? What's the ruling on drinking water? What's the ruling on all of these things which are permissible? Allah says in the Quran, خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مِنْ. Everything that has been created in the heavens and the earth has been created for you from Him, so that you can use it. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّن. The prohibited, the unlawful is also clear. What's the ruling on drinking khamr? What's the ruling on eating swine? All of that is well known. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. These are the boundaries of Allah, so do not transgress them. But then the Prophet ﷺ said, وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Most of the people, there are areas in between these two, a lot of the people are not aware of. A lot of the people are not aware of. Now, going back to what is halal and clear and what is haram is clear, this either is halal or haram and is well known out of the religion by necessity. Even the kuffar know that we are not allowed to drink alcohol. Even the kuffar know that we are supposed to pray 5 times a day. But some of these things which are halal and which are haram are gained out of knowledge, seeking knowledge, reading books, asking questions, etc. But now what happens is that when this thing that we know of Islam out of necessity is lost, or when seeking ilm is lost, things become unclear. Things become unclear because of ignorance, because of the lacking of seeking ilm. Sufyan al-Thawri, like Ibn Rajab has quoted here, said, "Stay away from all of these doubtful matters until the matter becomes clear to you." Stay away from all doubtful matters because of the level of ignorance and the lack of clarity surrounding these issues. Others from the ulama have also understood this hadith to mean that halal is clear and the haram is clear, وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ, is that when issues become a matter of confusion, where you think it might be halal, but it's actually haram, or you might think it's haram, where it's actually halal. So the good and the bad become mixed. And Imam Ahmad gave this as an example. He gave this as an example of his understanding also, that this mushtabihat, this matter of unclarity, can be at times when things become clouded between right and wrong, or they become mixed between right and wrong. So what is the way out? لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said that this statement of the Prophet ﷺ said that not many people know them, shows to us that many people actually do know them. If many people don't know them, then many people actually do know them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that most people don't know them and only a small amount of people that do know them. No, it means that there are a lot of people that don't know them, but there are also a lot of people that do know them. Ibn Rajab also said that the ulama of the Salaf have also interpreted this to mean that the unclear matters is not talking about the qualification of the person, but the unclarity or the lack of clarity of a particular ruling. So he's saying it could be that some aspects of the religion, there are ulama there. They understand the mas'ala, they have an opinion, but the ruling on this has not been defined yet. For example, cryptocurrencies. Everybody probably has their own view. People have looked into it, some people have bought them, and even some of the ulama are saying that it's halal, and some of the ulama are saying that it's haram. Now, it could be that an alim looks at the issue and he understands everything, he understands all the ins and outs, but still it remains a matter which is unclear. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said that this is an example of this hadith, that it could be that the actual ilm itself is unclear, but it could actually mean that the ruling needs clarification, it needs further investigation, it needs further description. Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah said something which is very similar in his explanation also. Then Ibn Rajab rahimahullah goes on to say, talking about the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ فَقَدْ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ, that if a person avoids himself from following any of these unclear matters, then he has erred on the side of caution, and he has protected his religion and his honor. He has protected his religion and his honor. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said that it's not permissible for a person to fall into the unclear matters intentionally. So if he thinks that cryptocurrencies is unsure, there's no fatwa, I don't know what to do, it's not permissible in this scenario for him now to go and buy cryptocurrencies. But now also he said that this is of different scenarios also. Just like the first thing of the Prophet ﷺ, وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ. Mushtabihat now could be referring that is unclear to the people, but it could also refer to the actual ruling is unclear. But now here also he's saying that you protecting yourself is of different types. So for example, like we said before, if a person falls into something which is unclear on purpose, then this is haram. And Umar radiallahu anh was also took this so far, and he said that Ibn Rajab is saying here that it's permissible for a person to talk about somebody openly and criticize him openly, and this will not be Gheebah if a person was to follow something which is intentionally unclear. So this person, he's gone and got a mortgage, he's got a fatwa from somebody and he's gone and got a mortgage, then now he's intentionally gotten himself into something which is unclear. Ibn Rajab is saying here that this is not Gheebah, because he is sinning openly. If something is not clear to himself. It might be clear to Abu Maryam. This is the ruling. I understand the ruling. But this ruling, now for example, cryptocurrencies. Do you buy it? He says yes. Why? Because it's halal. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-halal bayin. For me, it's halal. And the asl is all transactions are halal. It's a form of currency. Yes, maybe it's not recognized by your government, but by another government, but it is used to trade. So yes, it has a manfa'ah. Is it hand in hand? Yes, I do it hand in hand. It's instant transaction. Are all the conditions of bay and shira and all that met? Yes, for me, Abu Maryam says, yeah, khalas. He's gone and bought it. I still don't understand. Can I go and buy it just because he's gone and bought it? Because he understands the mas'ala doesn't mean I understand the mas'ala. So now we have a person not understanding something and clearly just going into it, that's haram. But a person knowing that he doesn't understand something, that is also haram. You see the difference between the two? The first one, a person goes ask the mufti. Mufti says, yes, you can buy a riba-based house. Get the loan, no problem. But there are other people saying that, I don't think you should do this and this and that. It's not a religious dialogue. They're not saying that it's haram because of X, Y, and Z. They're just saying, look, maybe you're making the wrong decision. He goes and does it anyway. That's haram. Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ. Whoever falls into these unclear matters on purpose, then he has fallen into haram. That's one example. Another example where you see your brother or somebody else doing something and he understands something for it to be halal, but you don't understand and you think that it might be haram, and if you don't earn the side of caution, then you yourself will be falling into something which is haram. Another scenario Ibn Rajab gives, for example, something is clear to you, but it's unclear to other people. Are you allowed to act upon it? So now, like for example, he believes that cryptocurrency is okay. All the people in this room will say no, it's haram. There's ulama in Mamlaka saying haram. Everybody's saying it's haram. But he is able to do his own ijtihad, or maybe ask someone who's done ijtihad. Is he now allowed to follow it? Or is he classed as somebody who is falling into the shubuhat, then waqa'a fil haram? Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said that he is allowed then to act upon it, because now it's not a shubuh. It's not a shubha. It's not from the shubuhat. For him, it falls under the first category. It goes back to in al-halal bayin. But Ibn Rajab says, as long as the ijtihad is correct, either the person himself is able to make that ijtihad, or he has asked somebody who has made that ijtihad for him. And an example Ibn Rajab gives of this is when Anas radiallahu anhu became old, he used to pray Salatul Jumu'ah in his house. He used to pray Salatul Jumu'ah in his house. And the ulama have said, Ibn Rajab also here, have said that at that time nobody would have understood why he prayed in his house. Anas, according to his own understanding, you have to remember he died at 100 plus, 120 something. So he lived a very long life, way after the companions. Most of them had passed away. He was one of the last ones to pass away. So now he would have had an understanding that other people didn't have. And the ulama, the Hanabila and others from the ulama, the Shafi'i, etc., they have said that as long as the rows are connected, even if it goes back to your house, then you are from that jama'ah. And this now applies to the Haram, applies to Makkah, applies to Medina. If you're in your hotel room and the rows are connected, it makes no difference for you to leave or not. You're literally standing and you can see the guy in front of you through the window. And in fact, you might actually be worse off if you go down. You might actually go backwards and have to pray on the road, etc. If the rows are connected, then the salah is sahih. And this is what Anas did. So now Ibn Rajab is saying that even if people don't understand it, you can act upon it because you understand it. Can you act upon it even though you understand it, but other people don't understand it, and if they found out that you were going to do it, you'd be criticized for it? Again, he says yes. Again, he says yes. So a person comes into the masjid, he doesn't want to put foot to foot, for example, he wants to pray it like this. Everybody else in the masjid is putting foot to foot. Then they'll come after him and say, what are you doing? Why are you praying like this? Can he pray like that? As long as it's not going to create any disunity and disruption, discord, etc. like that, then he is allowed to stand in that manner. And this is exactly what Ibn Rajab has said, also, as long as it doesn't create fitna, etc., then he's allowed to follow the ijtihad as to what he thinks is correct, because it is clear to him, even though it may be unclear to other people. What does this hadith tell us? This hadith tells us a series of different things, and it gives us a whole list of principles to understand. And like we said, that this is one of those hadith that the ulama have given extreme importance to, and they said that the whole religion, yadur alay, that the whole religion is, it surrounds the whole of the religion. Number one, it teaches us the importance of knowing the religion and practically implementing what we know. And Allahu A'lam, Imam Nawawi places this hadith after the hadith of innovation and after the hadith of ikhlas and a'mal bin niyyah. So it's as if, Allahu A'lam, he's saying, sort your niyyah out, sort your iman out, hadith of Jibreel and Buni al-Islam, and then protect yourself from innovating into the religion, have the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih, and then follow what is halal, and follow what is stay away from what is haram. It also teaches that the ulama are indispensable to this ummah. We are all dependent upon every single one of them, and that you will be saved from falling into the haram by studying and getting closer to Allah and seeking knowledge of His religion. It also teaches us that some matters are hidden even to the ulama, that they are careful about not saying something which they are not certain about, or issuing a fatwa or issuing a ruling on something that they are not 100% certain on. So how about us, our tongues and our actions? It's very easy for people to talk about rulers and policies and things that are going on abroad, things that are going on inside, things that are going on in different masjids. But this is not the way of the believer, as we see in this hadith, and it's definitely not the way of the pious and the ulama. It also teaches us, where the rest of the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever dwells into the obscure matters will fall into haram, and it's just like a shepherd who grazes his herd around a sanctuary. And every king has his own sanctuary, and Allah's sanctuary is His prohibitions. And if a person, and indeed the Prophet ﷺ ended the hadith by saying, وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. There's a limb or morsel inside of your body. If it is clean, then the actions will be clean. If it is corrupt, then your actions will become corrupt. And what this teaches us is that we have to protect the rights between ourselves and our Lord, and with one another, with the creation. This hadith also teaches us a very important principle that Ibn Rajab discussed. If a matter is not clear, what becomes now the new default position? Some of the ulama have said you take the safer view. You take the safer view. So for example, you have an action, do it or don't do it. I don't know. This one seems strong, this one seems strong. What must you do? Take the safer view. And the ulama, the majority of the ulama, have gone with this one. And they've said that this is wara'. And wara' is to abandon anything which will put you into the hellfire, or which will put you into the hellfire, yes. Some of the ulama, and this is the opinion of Ibn Mas'ud, Salman al-Farsi, Makhul, Zuhri, and Ibn Uthaymeen also, rahimahullah, that it's permissible for you to take the easier view. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. So if something is not clear, and you think that it's very strong, that this is okay, and the ulama are saying that it's okay, but there's another side saying that it's not okay, but I would think that the easier view is okay, then you can take the easier view according to the second group of ulama. Imam Ahmad was of the view that you are only allowed to engage in these unclear matters where there is a strong divide between the ulama in a manner which you need, or the amount that you need. An example that he gave, for example, say you've got halal wealth and haram wealth. They got mixed up. What do you do now? According to the majority of ulama, You have to estimate. If you can't estimate, then act on the safer side. I think there's about £10 in there which is haram, 90 is halal, but it could be 20. Khalas, give 30 away in sadaqah. I'll keep 70 for myself. But Imam Ahmad said that you can keep some of that 30 if you need it, but as much as you need. So I need £80 to get home. I only got 70. I'll give away 20 and I'll keep 80, even though 10 of it might be haram. Imam al-Thawri, Sufyan al-Thawri said, إِنَّمَا السَّمُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Surely those people are being called the muttaqeen, those people have taqwa, لِأَنَّهُمْ اتَّقَوْا مَا لَا يَتَّقِي. They feared something which could be detrimental for them. And there are many different statements then that Ibn Rajab brings. And the statement of Hasan al-Basri said that a person remains upon taqwa and remains from the muttaqeen if he leaves a lot of haram. تركوا كثير من الحلال مخافة للحرام. He leaves it fearing that he is going to displease his Lord and fall into something haram. Many statements he brings, but the point here is many of the ulama, many of the salaf have said that if you are not sure, then be safer. طيب. Ibn Rajab also said that we here have from this hadith also the principle which is known as adh-Dharia'ah. Adh-Dharia'ah is when something is probably permissible in itself, but if it leads to something which is haram, then that thing itself will become haram. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that between them you have unclear and doubtful matters, then leave it. Even though it might be permissible for you to do that action, leave it, because it might lead for you to falling into haram and the displeasure of your Lord. This is hadith number 6. Hadith number 7, which is a small hadith, which is on the authority of Tamim ibn Aus ad-Dari radiyallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ said, ad-Din nasiha. Ad-Din nasiha. Qulna liman. We said, who is sincerity for? The Prophet ﷺ said, the religion is sincerity. So we asked, who is sincerity for? The Prophet ﷺ said, lillahi, to Allah, wa li kitabihi, wa li rasulihi, wa li a'immatil muslimin, wa ammatihim. And like we said before, some of the ulama have classed 3 or 4 hadith which the whole religion fall around, and this is one of them. So you have aqidah, you have protecting the manhaj of the religion, then you have the actual actions of the religion, then you have akhlaq. And Abu Dawood said this hadith is one of the pillars of the religion. Abu Nu'aym, another one from the Salaf, has said this is 1/4, this hadith is 1/4 of your religion. This shows you the importance of having good manners and sincerity and advice towards one another. But now the question is, what is nasiha? What is nasiha? We find here nasiha has been translated as being advice and sincerity, both of them. But some of the narrations or some of the translations go with just sincerity, some of them go with just advice, and I've even some of them seen transliterated just nasiha. What is nasiha? The ulama Ibn Rajab in his explanation of this hadith said, an-nasiha refers to wanting all goodness towards that thing. To wanting all goodness towards that thing. So when you are sincere to your Lord, you want goodness towards your Lord in actions, in your aqidah, in your statements, in your internal, in your external. And you would hate anything bad happening between you and that thing. You would hate any kind of kufr or shirk. You would hate any kind of disconnection between you and your Lord. This is nasiha. It also continues, Ibn Rajab said that nasiha also involves happiness. You are happy when that thing is happy. You are happy when your brother is happy. You are happy when the Rasul is happy. You are happy when the book is being acted upon. You are happy when your Lord is happy. What makes your Lord happy makes you happy. And you are saddened by what saddens them, or what angers them. So whatever angers Allah, you will sincerely feel saddened. You will sincerely feel remorse and regret. Same goes for the book, same goes for the Rasul, same goes towards your brothers. And this has been mentioned by Ibn Salah and others from the ulama, and Ibn Rajab has recorded this. So nasiha refers to wanting all kind of goodness for the opposite party. Hasan al-Basri said, you will never reach sincerity and advice لأخيك with your brother حتى تأمره بما يعجز عنه. You will never be sincere towards your brother until you can advise him with something that you yourself are not capable of doing. You yourself are not capable of doing that thing, but you would advise him to do it. If you're not able to do it yourself, then how about when you are able to do it? This thing is for me. If I don't tell him, then I will be happy. Just leave him. But maybe it will benefit him. Oh, no, let's leave him. It's mine. This is not nasiha. You're wanting goodness for the opposite party, whether it's your Lord or whether it's from the creation. You don't want anything bad happening between your connection, between you and that thing. You don't want anything bad happening with Allah. And ta'ala Allah, I mean, nothing can bad happen to Allah. Ma yadurru fi as-sama' wala fil ard. But shirk happening, kufr happening, people having nifaq, you don't want those things. So if you're sincere to your Lord and you see somebody who is upon misguidance, it's from your sincerity to your Lord that you will give that person nasiha, because you want your Lord to be glorified. And you don't want anything bad happening between you and the relationship between your Lord or the creation. You don't want that connection to be cut. You will try and preserve it as much as you can. How? You are happy when they are happy, and you are saddened when they are sad. And you want to maintain the pleasure and support that you have with one another. So here we have nasiha to 5 different entities. We have Allah and His book and the Prophet and the rulers and the ulama and the Muslims. We have 5. And the ulama, Ibn Rajab here goes on to talk about nasiha to Allah includes having tawheed and ikhlas and worshipping Him internally and externally. Being sincere to the book means that you believe in it, you act upon it, you learn it, you recite it, you call towards it. Being sincere to the Prophet ﷺ means you follow him, you support him, you love him, you comply to his sunnah. And some of the Salaf okay, we'll skip that bit. Then the Prophet ﷺ, all of these 3 matters were to do with the unseen. Allah, Kitabih, Lillahi, wa li Kitabih, wa li Rasulih. Then the Prophet ﷺ talked about things of the seen. So clearly here now we have a connection between you being sincere to your Lord and you being sincere to the Muslims. It's a sign that you are not sincere to Allah when you are not sincere to Islam and the Muslimin. The book with the messenger. All of these matters of the unseen will affect how you implement your Islam in the seen. So then the Prophet ﷺ gave us number 4, which is the leaders. And some of the ulama referred to ai-imma not just being the political leaders, but also the leaders, cultural leaders, religious leaders, scholars, etc. That we have to be sincere to them, we must obey them, we're not allowed to create discord, we're not allowed to say bad things about them and about their decisions and if you genuinely have something that you can say, then say it to them, take their hand and speak to them privately. And being sincere to the Muslims, there's a hadith where Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali rahimahullah said that, and this is in Muslim, so that we gave bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ, that we will believe in him and we will have nasiha to every single Muslim that we see. And some of the ulama in the seerah have said that when Jarir, and they gave bay'ah, we gave bay'ah upon this, so he became Muslim, and the Prophet ﷺ shook his hand and said, yes, you can come into Islam. And part of this allegiance that he gave to the Prophet ﷺ was that he'd believe in, Islam and its tenets, etc., but also that he would be sincere to every single Muslim. Some of the people of Seerah have said that Jarir ibn Abdullah, whenever he met another Muslim, he would always smile towards him. He would always have the best of etiquettes towards that other Muslim. And there's an incident that actually happened one day. Jarir ibn Abdullah was traveling through the desert with his companions or whoever he was with, and he was going by, and he saw a man sleeping underneath a tree. And this man had put up a sheet on that tree, but now the shade had moved on. Does that make sense? So when he relaxed under the tree, he put the shade up on top of him, the sheet. Then he went to sleep. Now the sun is moving, the shade is gone, so now he is sleeping in the sun. Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali stopped his travel, and he stopped and he got down and he took down that sheet and he put it in a place where this man would be shaded once again. So the people asked him, why did you do this? He said, the Prophet ﷺ gave us bay'ah, that we be sincere to our fellow Muslims and have to stick to my word. This man, he went to sleep under shade. I'm going past him and I know that he's gone to sleep under shade, and I know now that he is not sleeping under shade, and had he been awake, he would have been pleased with it. So as an act of respect and my love towards him, my sincerity towards him, and me wanting good for him just like I want good for myself, and staying away from harm just like I want to stay away harm from myself, I got down and I moved the sheet over. And then Ibn Rajab rahimahullah gives many statements on how we should be sincere with our brothers. And Fudayl ibn Iyad said, Al-mu'min yastar wa yansah. The believer conceals the faults of his brother and he advises him. If he sees something wrong, if he sees him doing something bad, if he sees that there's matters that he can improve in, because he is sincere towards him. He won't let him go. He won't have a thought in his heart. He won't have a thought. He genuinely wants good for him and for harm to be removed for him. But he says, wal fajir, Fudayl ibn Iyad, he said, wal fajir, he proclaims his sins, the other person's sins, he exposes him, wa yu'ayir, and he disparages him, he insults him. This is clearly the boundaries that we have and the comparison, the contrast that we have between sincerity and insincerity towards your brother. Ibn Rajab then, rahimahullah, then goes on to talk about how this hadith follows on from the hadith of Jibreel, and this hadith is actually an extension in its meaning from the hadith of Jibreel, because this is the implementation of the hadith of Jibreel. How so? He said, Nasiha requires Islam, Nasiha requires Iman, and Nasiha requires Ihsan. And all of this includes having sabr, having love, having hope, having fear, and being united with one another. So you cannot really act upon the hadith of Jibreel without this hadith, according to the explanation given by Shaykh Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali rahimahullah. Bi-idhnillah, the last hadith that we can take today is hadith number 8, the hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, Umirtu an uqatil an-nas, I have been commanded to fight or combat with the people, as it says here, hatta yashhadu an la ilaha illallah, until they proclaim that Muhammad Allah is no worthy of worship of God except Allah, and Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger. He establishes the salah and he pays the zakat. And if they do all of this, asamu minni, they will be protected from me, their wealth, dima'uhum wa amwaluhum, and their bodies and their health and their wealth, illa bihaqqil Islam, except for the right of Islam, wa hisabuhum ala Allah, and their reckoning beyond that will be with Allah. We'll listen to the adhan, and after the adhan we can bi-idhnillah give some insight into this hadith.
على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله.
Regarding this hadith here, it's obviously a very controversial hadith because it's been used to attack the Prophet ﷺ and the religion of Islam. But it said that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, I was ordered to combat the people, and that's how the English has been translated here. Some of the translators have said that I've been ordered to fight the people, kill the people even. But before we look at all of this, let's look at the context and the history of how people actually became Muslim at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Majority of it was through da'wah. If you look at the people of Mecca, hundreds of people became Muslim through da'wah. And then the actions and the dealings of the Prophet ﷺ. And some of them actually came and they just gave bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ. Just like we see in the hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah and many others from the companions. So it's not rational and it doesn't make factual sense. And the Prophet ﷺ literally went to people's houses, put his sword against their throat and said, become Muslim, otherwise I'm going to kill you. That's not actually ever happened. What this hadith is telling us, that the Prophet ﷺ has been commanded to strive. What this hadith means is don't give up. Don't give up. You are commanded to reinforce La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And the reason why we know this is like Ibn Hajar in Fath al-Bari and many others from the ulama has said, the Prophet ﷺ said, Umirtu an uqatil an-nas. He didn't say an aqtul an-nas, I've been commanded to kill people. And the ulama have said that there is a difference between fighting in this sense and al-muqatila. And muqatila refers to complete annihilation. Whether they accept it or not, irrespective, I'm just going to go there. And this is how people have interpreted this hadith. Extremists within Islam and extremists outside of Islam. And you can see how both of these people are learning Islam from one another. And they are not learning Islam from its true scholars. So these people are blaming Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, say, yo, Muhammad is extreme. And those extremists within Islam say, yeah, this is how he was. And they're both hand in hand. But if you look at the reality of the situation, the factual, the historical, and the linguistic sense of it, Prophet ﷺ never ever legislated killing people indiscriminately. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, in his explanation of this, said that the Prophet ﷺ categorically forbade killing innocent people. And in fact, what he used to do is he used to send out letters, he used to send out da'wah, he used to send out invitations, he used to send out people to call them to Islam. And whenever he used to go on an expedition, he used to tell the people, listen to see if you can hear the adhan. Because now you're going to a village, we don't have any treaties with them, we don't know anything about these people, but listen to see if you can hear the adhan. If you can hear the adhan, then there is no right for you to go in there and start killing people. So the point here is that the Prophet ﷺ was very, very careful. And he upheld his treaties and his ties. And Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, said, even if people are sinners, and even if people are falling into major sins, it is not permissible for us to fight them and to remove them and to kill them, etc. So how about those people outside of Islam? There's a long hadith that was well known to all of us. The Prophet ﷺ talked about the end of times, and he said that you will see things that the umara ta'rifun wa tankirun, you will see things that you will like and the things that you will dislike. And the companions asked, what shall we do in that scenario? Shall we fight them? Shall we kill them? The Prophet ﷺ said, La ma sallu. As long as they pray, then you cannot do anything like that. They have not taken themselves out of Islam. apostated, and they have not gone against any treaty. So if this is the case, then it's not permissible for you to go around indiscriminately killing people. This also teaches us that if the pillars of Islam are upheld, then socially and individually you will have stability. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, I have been commanded to strive against the people, remind the people and encourage the people and try and convince the people that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. This would probably be a better translation, a more factual translation. And that Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger. And the more they increase in doing these goodness, what happens? And if they do all that, then their blood and their wealth will be protected. So there is a direct relationship between Tawheed and Salah and Zakat, and you protecting yourself from falling into major sins, falling into behavior of transgressing against other people and oppression. Because the Prophet ﷺ clearly said that once you do that, then you will become protected. Also from this, in the last point, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah said that the Prophet ﷺ through this hadith is calling towards tawbah. Well, we know this from the last statement. وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. If you have sinned, if you have made a mistake, if you have done something wrong, then your reckoning is with Allah. Prophet ﷺ is saying, I don't want to get involved, basically. That's what Ibn Rajab is saying. I don't want, you go back to your Lord, purify yourself, rectify yourself, and this bi'idhnillah will rectify your open and your outer standard also. This is the end of hadith number 8. Bi'idhnillah, we'll continue with hadith number 9 next week. Ask Allah to make this beneficial for us all, and that He gives us the correct understanding and the hidayah and the tawfiq to act upon the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. There's a hadith that's come through, there's a question that's come through here where the person is asking, is it permissible for me to put the Quran on in the house, on CD I'm guessing, and leave the house in that manner? I think what they mean by this is that, is it permissible for them to do so, and will they, I think what they mean is, will I gain the protection, or will I gain the barakah from the Quran? And the ulama have basically said that for you to enable you to get the full barakah and the protection and the reward and all of these other things that the virtues that the Quran brings can only be there is, number one, going back to hadith number 1, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. So if you're putting a tape on of Sheikh Sudais listening, then the niyyah of all of these things is not there. That's number 1. Number 2, if a person is putting on the recitation of the Quran, then they will not get that protection that the Prophet ﷺ, I'm guessing that they're talking about Baqarah especially, because the Prophet ﷺ said yuqra fi bayt, or bayt yuqra fi, a house where it is recited in, not played in. There's a big difference. The ulama have said there's a big difference, and it all stems back to the first point that we've just talked about, which is an-niyyah. And remember, some of the ulama that we studied under has said that this becomes a very difficult issue now, because you are thinking that there is barakah in something where there is no actual barakah, that you think that the barakah is in there. Does that make sense? So you put that CD on thinking, yes, the shaitan will go away and the malaika will come down, thinking that this is the barakah that you're going to receive, but that actual barakah is not there. And this is how bad things have begun. Amulets and all these kind of things. So I mean, it's a far-fetched example, but it's something that the Muslim must definitely pay attention to. But this doesn't mean that you can't listen to the Quran. Obviously there is a lot of khair in it. Prophet ﷺ, I believe there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that listening to an ayah of the Quran is like getting the reward of a mountain weight. Because you are listening and you are pondering, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're listening to these recitation of the Quran that there is no good in it, but it's why you are using it. So going back to the hadith of man amila amal, why are you putting that CD on? If the reason is to seek tabarruk from that CD recitation, then that would be wrong. But if you are doing it with the reason of benefiting and practicing or memorizing or revising or whatever, then inshallah there's khair in it. Anybody got any questions? Yeah.
That's an excellent question about if he wears jeans.
Yeah.
It's just boy that might be tight. Is that still covered? Is that still covered, or does he need to wear something that's slightly looser?
Or wearing the jeans, or wearing tight clothes permissible for men and women. For women, obviously, it would be emphatically haram. It would be even worse because it's showing the image and showing. But the same thing applies to the men. Now, the ulama have differed according to the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Kasiyat al-Ariyat. Prophet ﷺ said that there will come a time where women will be dressed but they will be naked. They are dressed but they are naked. How does that make sense? Imam Nawawi said is that they will be dressed but you can see everything, the shape of their body and everything. So even Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah said that if a woman is wearing leggings or she's wearing tight jeans, then she has not covered her awrah. Yes, the skin is not there, yes, all of that, but the covering the awrah also requires covering the shape. So now by extension that also applies to the men. So he would need to make sure that his awrah is not tight. I mean, if it's loose and it's showing the limb or the size of the limb, something like that, that's fine, that's understandable. But if it's really tight, like some people wear tight t-shirts and tight jeans and all of those things, then that would be something which would not be permissible. Wallahu a'lam. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Yes, uncle.
What is the meaning of the word aura?
The meaning of the word aura is the area which is sacred to every single person, which another person cannot see or touch. Our aura is your own private area. Now the private parts in Islam are of two types. The ulama have said the muqallada, which are the two private parts. Yeah. And then you have the mukhaffafa, which is the slightly lesser one, but it's also part of the aura which is haram for you to touch and look at. And for the men, it's from the navel to the top of the knee. It doesn't include the knee with the majority of the ulama. To the top of the knee. That is the mukhaffafa. Mughallada is the two private parts.
Right.
Nobody can ever see those. But the mukhaffafa is the lesser one. So if it slightly goes up on all of these things, then inshallah you're not sinful as long as you didn't intend it. Prophet ﷺ was one time rode on his horse, and as he was climbing, his thigh became apparent. So the ulama have taken from that it is not halal for you to expose yourself, look at it, touch it. But if it happens, then unintentionally, then this is fine. So this is the two different types of aura. But aura in a general sense is the private parts for yourself that you have to preserve. Nobody else can look at them, nobody else can touch them.
It is also said that woman has more aura than man.
Of course.
Is that right?
Yes. In Islam, women have more aura than the man. This is because their objectification is different. A woman is looked at in a different way to a man. And we know this through statistics in crime, we know this in statistics in society, that the women who fall under sexual crime, the biggest gender are the women. They are the biggest object for being transgressed over. So this is clear. So Islam's cause out of this is that the woman dressed in a modest manner. And the modest manner is covering her whole body. And like we were just saying, making sure that the shape is not seen, making sure that the skin is not seen and all these things. But this doesn't mean that the man can dress what he wants also. The man is commanded to be modest. The man cannot be somebody who is going around dressing in a manner that's going to create disruption also and create perversion also and all these things. But technically for women it is more difficult because of the desires and the lust and the issues connected to those things. Inshallah we'll talk about it more after.